Welcome to the 2022 horror movie guide. This is not a top 100. I've put aside most of my biases to bring you a comprehensive guide of what came out this year because a lot of people complain there's not a lot of horror. And just like I did this list last year, so you can go back and watch the one from 2021, I'm here to prove you wrong. I had to stick to 100 because in 2022, just like 2021, there were over 1,500 movies put into online databases. These are the ones that made the biggest impact and the ones that you want to cross-check with the list of what you've already watched. I've done a couple of disclaimers down below. If you have any questions about this list, please go check it out and you can check out the list while you're at it. I don't want to bore you with all that jargon. I want to get straight into it. These are divided into categories, and of course, a lot of these horrors can spread across a lot of categories. I did my best. It was just easier to do it this way. So I hope you understand. If you have any questions, check that down below. And let's get straight into it. Here are 100 horror movies that came out in 2022. So exciting. Action horror Slashback is set in the village of Pangatang, located on Baffin Island, Canada. Here we follow a group of underestimated teens who discover a possible alien invasion is threatening their hometown. Finnish horror Hatching is a layered experience surrounding a young girl and the pressures put on her by her demanding mother. But she soon finds solace in a strange egg she discovers, raising it as her own. The Cursed is a classic werewolf film set in 19th century rural France. The mystery fantasy horror is the story of a curse that's been unleashed on a small village. Now the townspeople fear the worst as a young boy goes missing. Indie horror Slapface is a bizarre horror story about a boy in the midst of grief who discovers an entity living nearby in the woods. But instead of fearing this monster, he befriends it. Jordan Peele's Jaws for the Sky rocked the boat in 2022. Yes, I know this one was really hard to put into a category. The epic adventure horror thriller is the story of a ranch under attack from something above and their mission to prove it. The Twin is a drama horror mystery starring Teresa Palmer, and it follows a mother that after a tragic accident killing her son needs to confront the dark truth about her surviving child. Mystery comedy horror American Carnage starring Jenna Ortega is about a group of newly detained teens who are offered freedom if they can provide care to the elderly in a homing facility. But as soon as they arrive, they're aware that something is very wrong with this home. Can they figure out the mystery before it catches up to them? Set in Netherlands, Moloch is the story of a woman living on the edge of a peat bog. When her family are attacked by a stranger one night, she starts to investigate local law. But the deeper she digs, the more she uncovers the evidence of something unworldly. Next, we have mystery horror The Visitor. After a series of tragedies, Robert and his wife move back in with her parents. But he soon discovers a portrait of a man that he believes looks like him. Where did this portrait come from and why is it here? Moving house is one of the most stressful life events. Horror The Cellar takes us to a new level when a family who move into a new house leave their children at home for the first time, and their daughter mysteriously disappears from within the walls. Afflicted with a mysterious disease after surviving an overdose, Matriarch follows Laura, a woman who returns to her hometown to confront her personal demons, but is met with a different kind of evil. The Privilege is a German horror about a group of wealthy teens who attend an elite private school, but their school year takes a turn for the worse when they uncover a dark conspiracy. What Josiah Saw is a slow burn horror with some seriously disturbing scenes. The story surrounds a family with buried secrets that reunites at a farmhouse. Here they face painful memories and past sins. Spanish crime horror thriller The Chalkline follows a couple who find a strange girl in the middle of an empty road at night. The girl refuses to live outside of a chalk line. While doctors try and push her outside her comfort zone, the couple communicate with her to find answers. But is she more dangerous than she appears? Drama horror thriller Nanny is the story of an immigrant woman who has moved to New York City to start a new life. But things start to unravel when she is forced to confront a painful truth. Christina Ricci brings us Monstrous, a story centering around a traumatized woman fleeing her abusive ex with her son. But in their new home, they find a new type of monster waiting. Mr. Harrigan's Phone is a slow-moving horror mystery about Craig, a boy who grows an unlikely bond with a rich man. But when the old man dies, Craig begins to receive messages from beyond the grave. Love to hate it or hate to love it, The Invitation got people talking. This horror romance is the story of a woman who, following her mother's death, meets up with a side of the family she never knew existed. They may welcome her with opening arms, but there's a dark secret waiting. Drama horror You Won't Be Alone is a true journey film that kicks off with the story of an isolated village in the 19th century in Macedonia, where a young girl is kidnapped and transformed. The audience follows her life and the lasting effects from her imprisonment. Based on the book of the same name, Bones and All is the story about cannibals living among us, and one girl's struggle to come to terms with her life as an eater while gripping onto her past. It's a surprisingly heart-wrenching and gory ride. Spanish horror Piggy is the disturbing story of a girl who is bullied by a clique of cool poolside girls while on holiday, but the long walk home changes her life in horrific ways. This is a bloody one, watch out. The Banquet is a slow burn about a family's breakdown when their daughter Betsy claims to experience profound enlightenment and refuses to eat. The family now struggle to come to terms with what is really happening to Betsy and if they can conquer the darkness. German horror Old People is about a woman who travels home with her 2 children for her sister's wedding, but finds herself defending her family against an unlikely group of villains. Set in the Basque region during the late 19th century, drama fantasy horror All the Moons is the story of a stranded, injured girl who is saved by a woman that's able to provide her eternal life. But there is a cost. Regina Hall leads Master, a story of a college campus where a student is targeted by racist attacks, but insists that she is being haunted by a ghost from the school's past. It's a twisted journey depicting 3 different perspectives. Dubbed one of the most disturbing films of the year, The Innocents is a Norwegian drama horror about a group of children living in an apartment block who harness their inner power with dangerous consequences. Extreme Taiwanese horror The Sadness had everyone talking this year. This film follows a couple attempting to survive when their city becomes the breeding ground of a virus that turns victims into bloodthirsty sadists. This one is not for the faint of heart. Soft and Quiet is a complete shocker and is best viewed without knowing anything. Let's just say it's a violent horror movie that follows a woman who organizes a meeting for like-minded women. But things go from horrifying to heart-wrenching when the group has a run-in with someone from their town. Speak No Evil is a Danish film that leaves the audience both disturbed and frustrated. We watch along as a Danish family reunites with a Dutch family they met on holiday. But what was supposed to be a weekend getaway turns into a haunting nightmare with many red flags. The film is a commentary on the etiquette and politeness of the Danish. Irish slow burn You Are Not My Mother is a gloomy horror centered around Shah, a girl whose mother goes missing only to return change. The drama horror is dark, dreary, and effective. Saloon is an action comedy that follows a trio of mercenaries that escape a coup taking refuge in a hidden region on the Saloon River, but something beyond the grave awaits them. Moody indie drama horror Vampire follows a man from London that travels to a small remote village in Serbia to look after a cemetery. Here he begins to have nightmarish visions and suspects the village is to blame. Grimcutty shows the dangers of widespread hysteria as we watch a town being hunted by an entity that has gone viral. Now parents try to minimize their children's exposure to the creature, causing them to hit the streets to find the answer. Indie horror When I Consume You is the story of addiction and loss. Following a brother and sister's unconventional connection, they seek revenge against a dangerous stalker. Nocebo is the story of a fashion designer who is suffering from a mysterious illness that puzzles those around her. But when help arrives in the form of a Filipino carer, a horrific truth is revealed. Incantation topped the list of one of the most scariest films of the year. The film opens up with a woman pleading with the camera about a curse that's been placed upon her daughter. Now we follow the story of how it came to be and the dangerous ritual that changed her life forever. Based on the popular book, My Best Friend's Exorcism is the story of best friends Abby and Gretchen, who are just trying to survive high school when an otherworldly demon invites itself to their weekend away at a lake. Sandra Oh stars in Oma as Amanda, a single mother who lives with her daughter on a quiet and secluded farm. But when her estranged mother arrives from Korea, she is forced to face her own fears for the first time. From the director of Knives and Skin comes Night's End. We follow an anxious man who moves into a haunted apartment. Here he finds something worse than he left behind, and he calls on a stranger to exorcise this darkness. Religious horror Pray for the Devil follows a nun who is preparing to perform an exorcism, but comes face to face with her own demons along the way. Drama horror She Will is a slow burn following an aging film star that retreats to the Scottish countryside with her nurse to recover from surgery. But the land has a dark history of burning witches. Cute mumblecore horror House of Darkness is the story about clueless Hap, who goes home with a mysterious woman with sinister intentions. It's a slow conversational horror that is entirely obvious, but equally wholesome for horror fans. Based on the popular American chain, Spirit Halloween is a PG-13 adventure horror about a group of friends attending a Halloween store grand opening. Here they plot to stay inside all night, but the store isn't any ordinary store, and inside ghoulish surprises await. Sci-fi horror Significant Other follows a group who take a remote backpacking trip, but after a fight they realize that not everything is as it seems in their relationship and within the forest, which is hiding a dangerous secret. This film was a lot more surrealist than I imagined. In A Wounded Fawn, we follow a woman dipping her toe back into the dating pool, but in doing so, she becomes the unsuspecting target of a strange man with a fascination for art. Alex Garland's drama fantasy horror Men caused quite a stir. In A24 fashion, the film is anything but routine as we follow Harper, a woman running from a recent event who hopes to find peace in a house in the English countryside, but is plagued by a stranger looming nearby. Crimes of the Future is the latest Cronenberg exploration. This bizarre entry is about a world where humans are attempting to adapt to a synthetic environment. Here we follow a performance artist who publicly showcases the metamorphosis of the human body. Hellbender is a surrealist indie horror that centers around a mother and daughter who remain isolated, protecting their secret ties to witchcraft. It's a unique coming-of-age film available on Shudder. 30 Years in the Making Mad God is a surrealist mixed-media stop-frame animation by Phil Tippett. The fantasy horror is about an assassin who travels through a nightmare underworld of tortured souls. This one has it all. It's a slow burn psychological horror crime drama. Resurrection stars Rebecca Hall as Margaret, a woman who seems to have her life together when she locks eyes with a man from her past who resurrects her trauma. The film is a brutal retelling of abuse with one of the most chilling monologues I've ever heard. Smile was a pleasant surprise this year, an alluring popcorn horror with enough depth to truly satisfy. The film follows the aftermath of a bizarre, unexplainable event that turns a doctor's life upside down. Now she must search for the truth because there is no escape. Goodnight Mummy is an English remake of the 2014 Austrian film of the same name. This one, starring Naomi Watts, follows twins who move into a new house with their mother, who has just had face-changing cosmetic surgery, but the boys start to believe something is wrong with Mummy. Horror Watcher is a slow-moving psychological thriller based around paranoia. When Julia moves to Bucharest with her husband, she attempts to find a new routine, but soon feels like she is being watched. When her husband doubts her claims, she begins to obsess over who it may be. Starring Barbara Crampton, Alone With You is a mind-bending horror that follows a young woman's downfall as she prepares for a romantic homecoming with her girlfriend, but waiting alone in the apartment conjures up dangerous paranoia. Argentinian fantasy horror On the Third Day follows Cecilia and her son Martin, who escape a traumatic situation only to be involved in a car crash. Now Cecilia must find her son who has disappeared amongst the madness. Off Season is a fantasy horror about Marie, a woman who, after receiving a mysterious letter, travels to a remote island town. But it's always easier entering than leaving, and now she remains trapped in a nightmare. Bed Rest is a mysterious psychological horror about Julie, a pregnant woman who begins to wonder if her home is haunted or if it's just all in her head. Experimental horror where all going to the World's Fair is misunderstood. The film follows Casey lost in her own mind with only the internet to break up her human experience. Here she finds comfort in participating in an online role-playing horror game. Set in 1843 in the dark of winter, the last thing Mary saw is a grueling story of a young woman who is investigated following the mysterious death of her family's matriarch. Shepherd is a horror mystery based in the UK where we follow a young Scottish shepherd who is running from his past and finds a job alone on an island. Now he must face an ominous secret alone. Starring Tilda Swinton, The Eternal Daughter is a story about a mother and daughter who visit a hotel from their past. But upon arrival, they sense that something is off and long-buried secrets come to the surface. This film is extremely slow, but has some satisfying ghostly vibes. Choose or Die is a survival horror surrounding an obscure 80s video game that becomes deadly after it unleashes real-life consequences on its players, forcing them to make terrifying decisions. Sensory horror See For Me follows visually impaired Sophie, who is cat-sitting a secluded home when three strangers attempt to break in. Now Sophie must use technology to aid her sight, an app that will allow someone to see for her on the other side. Jaw-dropping Barbarian follows Tess, a woman who finds that her Airbnb has become double booked. Now she's forced to choose between finding a place to sleep in a dangerous area or trusting a stranger and staying the night. But she soon discovers that there's more to fear than just a strange house guest. Dario Argento is back with a new giallo flick. This one is about a woman who loses her vision and becomes hellbent on tracking down a dangerous killer throughout the streets of Italy. No Exit is the story of a group of unlikely strangers who are forced to spend the night together in a stranded rest stop when a dangerous storm rolls in. But one of them is hiding a dangerous secret, one that is sitting tied up in the car. Lucky McKee returned in 2022 for Old Man, the story of a hiker who stumbles upon an erratic old man living in the woods, but entering his house to escape the elements proves to be more dangerous. Indie found footage The Andy Baker Tape is the last known footage of well-known food blogger Jeff Blake, who meets his half-brother Andy Baker for the first time. They take off on a bonding road trip, which may be their last. Torn Hearts follows a country music duo who finds out where their idol lives. Showing up unannounced, they don't realize their idol is harboring a dark secret until it's too late. Slick comedy horror Fresh is a delightful, dangerous look at dating gone wrong. Noah, played by Daisy Edgar Jones, meets Steve, a mysterious man who invites her to a weekend away. Unbeknownst to her, he is hiding his unusual appetite. Run, Sweetheart Run follows a woman who is set up on a dinner date with her boss's client, but as the red flags emerge, she begins to make her escape plan. Now she must run for her life in an attempt to escape his grasp. Barbarians is the story of a dinner party from hell, as four so-called friends come together for a birthday celebration. But secrets arise that complicate the dynamics of the group, and that's just the start of the terror. Comedy horror Who Invited Them is the story of a couple hosting a housewarming when uninvited guests outstay their welcome, leading to dangerous consequences. 2022 was a good year for The Hawks, where Ethan played one of the most mysterious horror villains, the Grabber, in The Black Phone. Based on the Joe Hill story, the horror is about a killer on the loose targeting young children in a small town. Horror thriller Gloria starring Ryan Quanten and J.K. Simmons is a wild trip. In Lovecraftian fashion, we follow a man who is going through a breakup and finds himself locked inside a bathroom when a mysterious entity lures him into a waking nightmare. One of the most controversial entries of this year is Dashcam. It's the story of abrasive Annie who live streams her journey to the UK and becomes the center of a horrific conspiracy. Horror comedy The Loneliest Boy in the World is a modern fairy tale. Well, if you add zombies. The film follows Oliver, who was on a mission to make new friends after the sudden death of his mother. Christmas Bloody Christmas, set on, you guessed it, Christmas Eve, follows Tori, a woman looking to let her hair down for the night when a robotic Santa in a nearby toy store goes haywire. Now the town is under threat as it sets off on a rampage killing spree. Comedy horror The Seed starts out as a fun girls' trip, but swiftly takes a nosedive when a meteor shower reveals a threat not of this world. Violent Night was a fun surprise as we fight along Santa, who shows up to a home under attack from a bunch of criminals. The movie is surprisingly wholesome and extra gory. Comedy drama horror Flux Gourmet is set inside a devoted culinary performance where a collective finds themselves embroiled in power struggles, artistic vendettas, and gastrointestinal disorders. Homegrown Horror The Tapes is a low-budget indie anthology Christmas horror. That is a mouthful. It's a fun, lighthearted slasher starring Greg Sestero, Dave Sharon, and Vernon Wells. Deadstream is what happens when found footage meets live stream, and when a YouTube persona meets his match. The film follows Sean, who brings his followers to a haunted house, but his abrasive nature soon pisses off a vengeful spirit. Foo Fighter Studio 666 comedy horror was released earlier this year. R.I.P. to Taylor Hawkins. The film also stars Jenna Ortega. It's a campy story of a rock band who moved into a mansion that shows obvious signs of demonic activity. What could go wrong? Gen Z horror Bodies, Bodies, Bodies is a slasher with a twist. We watch on as a group of insufferable, toxic friends meet up with hopes to kill their boredom with a game of bodies, bodies, bodies. But that's not the only thing that they are killing. This is a really fun movie that keeps it surface level. In They/Them, Kevin Bacon returns to camp for a horror mystery slasher about a group of LGBTQ+ teens who are attending a conversion camp where they must band together to survive when a masked killer attacks. Aussie indie Sissy is the story of a social media influencer's journey from her calm online persona into blood-curdling reality. When Sissy runs into her old best friend from school, she's forced to heal old wounds, but ends up creating some new ones. Ty West shocked everyone in his comeback to horror with X, the story of an adult film crew shooting a film on an isolated ranch in Texas. Inspired by Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the 70s-style horror starring Mia Goth and Jenna Ortega kicked off a killer trilogy. Fast-paced comedy horror Unhuman is the story of a group of high school students who must work together after their bus crashes on a field trip. Now they must put their differences aside to survive the unknown. A reboot of the original Hellbound Heart novella by Clive Barker, Hellraiser 2022 follows the infamous puzzle box as it falls into the hand of a struggling addict who meets face to face with a group of sadistic supernatural beings from another dimension. Part of the Predator franchise, Prey is an action horror adventure. This one is about Naru, a skilled warrior who must fight to protect her tribe against one of the first highly evolved predators to land on Earth. Set in 1918 and the second film and prequel to the X trilogy, Pearl is the bloody story of a young woman on the brink of madness by her pursuit for something more, to become a star. Wow, this feels like a long time ago. Scream 2022 did come out at the start of this year. The epic return to Woodsboro was a reunion of the surviving original cast as they take on a modern Ghostface who is slashing a new generation. VHS is back with 99, another entry into the found footage anthology franchise. We witness a collection of horrific bloody nightmares based in the 90s. Does Terrifier 2 really need an introduction? In the latest Art the Clown installment, we follow a family that is terrorized by the iconic clown. Dubbed one of the most gory films ever made, bring your bath bags to this 80s inspired bloodbath. The dramatic conclusion to this timeline of the franchise, Halloween Ends, follows the saga of Michael Myers and Laurie Strode as they face off one last time. Taking place 7 years after the first film, Indonesian horror Satan Slays 2 Communion follows the same family who believe they are safe now living in flats because they're surrounded by people. However, they soon realize that this presents a new danger as their neighbors show signs of evil. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre returned in 2022 with this sequel that takes place 48 years later. Here we follow a group of young friends who disrupt a dangerous dangerous ghost town full of secrets. A remake of the '84 classic based on the book by Stephen King, Firestarter, this time starring Zac Efron, is the story of a young girl trying to understand the dangerous gift she was born with. Long-awaited prequel Orphan First Kill follows Esther, who after escaping a psychiatric facility travels to America to infiltrate a family looking to adopt a child. And that brings us to the end of this list. Thank you so much. If you watched all the way through, you're a champ. If you did enjoy the video or you found it helpful at all, give it a thumbs up. It really does help me out. Or why not share it with a friend? I do have a Patreon if you would like to support what I do here on YouTube. You can check that out. The link is down below, or you just look up Spooky Astronauts and I'll see you over there with some bonus content. Stay safe and stay spooky because I've given you 100 reasons to. Bye, friends.